Now we have the legend of Aeneas. Aeneas gets his own chapter because of the important role he plays in Roman history. This is the story of how ancient Rome linked itself to ancient Greece. We go back to the reign of Caesar Augustus, Julius Caesar's adopted son. In those in those times, three things were important: art councils, cultural programs, and education. In this part of Roman history, there's three main writers and sources of information for us about Roman history and culture. We have Virgil, who lived from 70 to 19 BC. We have Livy, who lived from 59 BC to 17 AD. He was a historian. And we have Ovid, who lived from 43 BC to 17 AD. We're going to focus on Virgil. In some ways, his name is written with an E, sometimes it's written with an I. Either spelling it is referring to the same man. Anyway, Virgil was born in Italy in Mantua. He was known for writing pastoral works. Think of the word pastures. When you think of pastures, you think of shepherds, milkmaids, fields, farms, and beautiful natural settings. Virgil's most famous work is the Aeneid, the legend of Aeneas, founder of the Roman race. It was written between 7 AD and 17 AD. It wasn't quite complete when he died. He wanted it burned, but Augustus said no. The Aeneid is considered central to Latin education. It was sometimes required to be memorized by students. It was also considered one of the cornerstones of Western literature. The story was written in 12 books in Latin and divided into two parts. There's books 1 through 6, and like the Odyssey, it involves a wandering journey at sea. There's books 7 through 12, which revolves around warfare and getting settled in Italy. Virgil's works is like Homer in style, but it was written deliberately, not sung on the fly like the earlier Greek works. Still, it takes on the poetic form of dialectic hexameter. It follows the pattern of epic poetry, and some of the things that it does, like most epic poetry, is it starts with an invocation to the muse, give me inspiration, give me strength. It starts in medias res, means in the middle of the action. It narrates a story that reviews the values of a civilization. It uses epitaphs like swift-footed Achilles, and there's the presence of gods and heroes. The Aeneid is composed of 9,896 lines. It's slightly shorter than either the Iliad or the Odyssey. The Aeneid deals with Aeneas. He's the son of a mortal father, Aeneas, and mortal mother, Aphrodite. You might compare him to Achilles, who has a mortal father and a goddess mother, Peleus and Thetis. So the premise of the story is that Juno, or Hera, as we've come to know her, is angry at Aeneas and Troy because Paris did not choose her in the judgment of Paris. Remember the apple of discord at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. And because she can see the damage done to Carthage, a city she really loves, so when Aeneas leaves Troy, she gets Aeneas to stir up the winds and blow him all over the place for 7 years. On his voyage, he had left Troy with 12 ships of refugees. He arrives in Carthage and tells his whole story of the war, just like Odysseus did with the Phoenicians. His story of Troy is very patriarchal image. The word patriarch deals with the head of family. When escaping Troy, he carries his father on his back, leading his little son Aeneas by the hand. In Carthage, he meets Dido, Queen of Carthage, which is in North Africa. She falls in love with Aeneas, and she kills herself when he has to leave to go on his mission. He sees the funeral pyre from his ship. Her death helps explain the long-standing feud between Carthage and Rome. Juno, Hera, loves Carthage, and Venus, Aphrodite, loves Rome. In his wanderings, he meets Helenus, last son of Priam that's still around, a prophet. Helenus tells them the way to Italy. Then he consults with Civil Akumai, and you might remember her from the Myths of Deaths, and with her he travels to the underworld. He sees the spirit of his father, Aeneas, has died along the voyage. Aeneas shows him things in and about the underworld. One thing is the mourning fields, those who died for love, like Dido. The other one is the Elysian fields, souls of great Romans, early kings, great generals, Romulus and Augustus. Then he talks about how spirits will soon reincarnate, differences in Rome and Greek views of death and afterlife. He reveals things about a prophetic vision of the future of Rome. Aeneas's duty is to govern the nations in peace, divine necessity for Rome to conquer the world. Once he leaves the underworld, he goes to a place where there is a white sow and 3 piglets. He ended up founding the city of Lavinium. Be sure to read earlier in the chapter to see what one of the prophets has to say about the white sow and the piglets. In Lavinium, he marries Lavinia after combat with her fiancé Turnus. Aeneas was going to spare Turnus his life until he sees that Turnus is wearing the sword belt of his best friend Pallas. He kills Turnus. It's like Achilles and Patroclus. There are some important things to consider with the Aeneid. There is the character of Aeneas, who's patriotic, loyal to family, pious, that's devotion to gods. He's known as Pious Aeneas, strong leader, and he's reasonable. There's the deliberate writing with stylistic expression. Remember, the Iliad was sung, but the Aeneid was always a written work. There is the propaganda in the story to justify Rome's destiny in history and Augustus' place in history as a ruler being divinely inspired, Iliad actions. In other words, he was chosen by the gods through his lineage. There is the patriotic purpose to tell the story of the nation's origins. It tells how Rome would have faced hardships like those of the Greek heroes of the Iliad and the Odyssey. It sets up for hundreds of years later when Romulus and Remus found Rome in 753. They are Aeneas's descendants, as are the Caesars. This connects the Roman race to the divinity of the divine. Their Greek ancestor is related to Aphrodite, Venus. It shows how the Roman culture adapted Greek myths to reflect their own values.